Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Spirit of Prophecy podcast. We have a very important program today that I hope will be a help and a blessing. Been wanting to get to this one for a while. There's been a lot of talk in the last years and a lot in recent months on the subject of Christian nationalism. And when people, it's kind of become a boogeyman. When you listen to the left, they are constantly condemning the Christian nationalists out there. And those of us, right-wing evangelical Christians, we sit at home listening to these people talk about these crazy radical Christian nationalists. And it's like, I think they might be talking about us. Is that what I am? Am I a Christian nationalist? I don't really know for sure. And, but then at the same time, as a Baptist, we also believe in the separation of church and state, but, does that mean we leave God out of everything? And, can we force people to be Christians? Well, obviously we don't believe that. So there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of things that are being said about Christian nationalism that we could relate with, some things we don't relate with. And more importantly, there's a lot of things being said in the name of Christian nationalism, things that we would agree with. Therefore, we hear those things and think, yeah, I'm on board with Christian nationalism. But at the same time, too, there's also things that are being said in the name of Christian nationalism that some of us would say, well, I am totally against that. And so there's a lot of confusion when it comes to this subject. A lot of Christians are trying to figure out, is this something that I embrace? I definitely don't like the people speaking against it. I do kind of like a lot of things about the people who are embracing it. And we have this attitude that we have to choose a side on everything. You have to choose a side between the Israelis and Palestinians. One of them's good and one of them's bad. When it comes to Russia and Ukraine, one of them's good, one of them's bad. There's never a situation where they're both bad. There's always a good and bad, and you have to pick one. You cannot remain neutral on these things, Republican or Democrat. One's the evil incarnate, the other one's the embodiment of all that is good, and you have to pick one. And often people look at both of these and they're like, I'm seeing some huge problems with both. And so there's a lot of confusion, and I want to talk about how we should feel about Christian nationalism. How should we respond to Christian nationalism when we hear about it, when we hear people talk about it? Should we be for it? Should we promote it? And more importantly, what does it mean? And if you look up the Wikipedia definition, I'll read the Wikipedia definition. It says Christian nationalism is a type of religious nationalism that is affiliated with Christianity. It primarily focuses on the internal politics of society, such as legislating civil and criminal laws that reflect their view of Christianity and the role of religions in political and social life. In countries with a state church, Christian nationalists seek to preserve the status of a Christian state by holding an anti-disestablishmentarian position to perpetuate the church in national politics. Christian nationalism supports the presence of Christian symbols in the public square and state patronage for the practice and display of religion, such as Christmas as a national holiday, school prayer, the exhibition of the nativity scenes during Christmas time, and the Christian cross on Good Friday. Christian nationalism draws political support from the broader Christian right, but not exclusively, given the broad support for observing Christmas as a national holiday in many countries. And so, that doesn't give us a ton of information to go on. But at the same time, do you, as a Christian and as a Baptist, one of our distinctives is separation of church and state. And obviously, we don't believe the state has any right to tell us what to do as a church. But do we, as Christians, do we have the right to impose Christian values, to put up Christian symbols in government places? And you might have some Christians say, well, absolutely not. We have no right to do that. But then, well, wait a minute. In the secular crowd, they're like, no, you have no right to push a religion down our throats. Therefore, no Christian symbols, because that's religion. And that's you forcing us to serve your God. While in the meantime, these same secularists out there, therefore displaying rainbow flags, in public places. We just saw in Congress, our congressmen, our representatives waving Ukrainian flags. We've seen many congressmen put Israeli flags outside their office. And so it's interesting how they can do all these political things, but because it's called political, it doesn't matter. But as soon as it's in the religious category, there's a problem. Well, here's the thing about that. The Word of God also, contains laws. It shows us morality. It shows us right or wrong. Where do we get our right and wrong from? Well, we get it from the Bible. Where do these secularists get their right and wrong from? In reality, it's the state. They believe that the state is God, or or the people are God, that we dictate these things. And so obviously as Christians, we don't believe in that. We believe in a government that has laws that reflect what the scriptures teach. But at the same time, we understand you can't force people to be a believer in Christ. So at what point are we trying to force Christianity on people, which no Baptist believes you can force somebody to believe in Christ. It's a decision that they have to make. And so since we can't force people to be Christians, is it wrong for us to want to force people to follow a morality that's according to the Word of God? And so we'll say some things about that hopefully will help us all keep these things in their proper place. But what I want to do, I do want to share some things with you. We're going to watch some clips from a documentary. I want to show a couple clips from a recent Tucker Carlson interview that he did with a pastor, Doug Wilson. I don't know anything about Doug Wilson, but they were talking about Christian nationalism. And I want you to notice some of the things that he said. I'm going to play a couple things that he said that I think were really good. I think these things were really good, and I want to talk about them a little bit. But at the same time, too, I want to. We're not going to play the whole thing, but if you go and you watch Tucker Carlson's interview he did with Doug Wilson, you'll see that I do think there's some confusion with Tucker Carlson that many well-meaning evangelical Christians share, where there's some confusion because he starts off the program talking about Biden and his war on Christianity, is how he put it. And so let me ask you this. Is Christian nationalism and Christianity one and the same? Okay. Now, I submit to you that, again, there are certain things that are spoken of within or in the name of Christian nationalism that are good, that reflect what the scriptures teach. But I'm going to show you there are many things also associated with Christian nationalism that are not even close to Christian whatsoever. And so I warn Christians, beware embracing a title like Christian nationalism, and beware just embracing an entire movement of something like this, because they're throwing you a few bones that you like, but let me tell you, they're adding some things too. They're adding some things that are poison, that you don't want, that we are strongly against, that the Bible is against. And so we don't want to be fooled by these things. But let's go ahead and watch some of this clip from Tucker Carlson and see what Doug Wilson has to say.
But this is something that people can say, oh, I love my nation and I'm a Christian. Why can't these?
Well, that's how I feel about it, but right. I don't know what it is. So how would you define it?
So it's, I think, very simple. If there is no God above the society, if there is no God above the state, take God away.
Yes.
The state is God.
Yes.
Okay? If there is no God above the state is God. The state becomes God. And it assumes the prerogatives of deity. Cameras at every intersection, aping omniscience,
yes,
omnipresence, in big brothers watching you.
Control of your mind.
Control of your mind. They want to control absolutely everything. Every keystroke, they want to control everything because they're aspiring to deity. The reason they're aspiring to deity is because they don't recognize any God above them.
All right. So obviously, as Christians, we can relate with a lot of what he said. It's okay to love your country. As Americans, we like the idea of America first and, patriotic, all that kind of stuff. right? But and then two, of course, we're Christians, right? And again, the people out there speaking the hardest against Christian nationalism are people who they do see the state as God. They see the people as God. And so if as a democracy, if the majority of people are for things that we would, as Christians, could never agree with, for example, abortion, as Christians, we cannot ever in any way support the slaughter of innocent children and babies. We would never be for that. And so, acceptance of the LGBT and all of that nonsense. Obviously, we can never, ever get behind that. And so they want to accuse us of forcing religion down our throat when we're not trying to force faith, but we are trying to force a morality that can be found in the scriptures, because we do believe that God and that Jesus Christ, all power is given him in heaven and earth. We believe he is king, and in his word, he sets morality. And while we cannot force faith on people, while we cannot force a relationship with God on people, we do, as a society and in government, we do have to have some sort of law. We have to have some kind of morality. There must be some type of punishment for crimes. But what determines crimes? The state or the scriptures? I believe if we go to the scriptures, we have a fantastic guide for what we ought to do. And when our country was started, it was a nation that had values that represented the scriptures. There were many colonies and many states that had Leviticus 20:13 on the books. And they even would reference Leviticus 20:13. Why? Because they had, as a nation, a morality even that reflected the scriptures. Even though, two, obviously separated church and state is not in any of our founding documents. That was something that Thomas Jefferson wrote in a letter to the Danbury Baptist Association. But at the same time, too, with the First Amendment and things like that, the government, they were not to make any law as to the establishing of a religion. There was not to be a state religion. Okay? And so we cannot force faith on people, but morals for sure. We, as a government, we should be stopping people from killing people. We should be stopping people from stealing and, bearing false witness. And even when it comes to sexual morality, things like adultery and fornication and sodomy and things like that, these things are crimes against humanity, and they should be punished. That is not enforcing a religion. It's enforcing a morality. We admit our morality comes from this. We admit that as a Christians. What you can't get from the atheists, from the secularists, you can't get them to admit where their morality comes from. And they have a morality. For example, they would consider me immoral for being against killing babies, for being against LGBT and things like that. And so you can understand why Christians are kind of gravitating towards this, because they're saying some things that are good. But again, just because we like some of the things we're hearing does not mean we embrace everything about it. There are some major flaws in this area, things that are being done in the name of Christian nationalism that are wrong. And let me just say this, many of the main faces of Christian nationalism are the last people on the planet that should be representing Christianity. And so let's go ahead and listen to a little bit more of this interview.
All right, so that's a most reasonable question. When they say which God, and here's the answer to your question. The Christian nationalist is the one who's willing to answer that question and speaking into the microphone. The true God, the living God, the one who exists.
Yes.
Not the God on our money.
How do you go back to a system based on Christian assumptions in a country that's no longer Christian?
What you do, and this is you invite a preacher onto your show, you're going to get some preaching.
Hope so.
All right. So there's no way to do it outside of God raising up preachers who preach a hot gospel and church planting. There's no way to do this politically.
You got to make the country Christian again.
That's right. Basically, we're in such a mess that there is no political solution. All right, we're beyond hope. There is no political solution. Right, but
So he's right on the money there. See, and this is what's happening with Christian nationalism. And I think the reason a lot of Christians are supporting it, they've got this attitude, well, if we can just get the right politicians in office, they can do our job for us. And let me tell you, it is our job as Christians to evangelize. And we cannot force people to be believers. We cannot force people to be Christians. But in Christianity, in the last, 50, 60, 70 years, we've gotten really lazy on things. A lot of false doctrine has crept into churches. A lot of things are being accepted as Christian that are not Christian. And a lot of Christians simply aren't evangelizing. You know how often I go out and I knock doors and people are, like, well, I'm Christian, but then they get offended if we ask them how they know for sure they're going to heaven, and and that we would try to change anyone's minds. I had a lady one time tell me, she's like, I'm a Christian, but I just don't believe in going and shoving my religion down people's throats. And it's just like, well, it's not about shoving religion down people's throats. It's called the Great Commission. What Christian religion are you a part of that doesn't acknowledge the Great Commission of going into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature? Oh, and guess what? Those disciples who went and did that, they made people mad at them all the time. You know why? Because a lot of people didn't want to hear it, but it didn't stop them. They said we ought to obey God rather than men. When authorities tried to stop them, they kept preaching the gospel. And so that is the solution. The solution is not better government. Our politicians are weak, pathetic. They're spineless, most of them. And the simple fact is, if we would change the people, we would change the politicians, because they just go with the flow. Change the people and you'll change the politicians. But I'm afraid a lot of Christians are looking at Christian nationalism as like an easy solution. Let's go get a dictator in there that represents our values, and then we'll be fine. No, we have to change things ourselves, and by each Christian going out there and being a light to the world and spreading the gospel to every creature. And so when it comes to Christian nationalism, some things you need to understand is there is not one clear definition when it comes to Christian nationalism. In fact, a lot of times people, when they talk about it on the left, they like to poison the well. And what they'll say is they'll often refer to it as white Christian nationalism. They like to make it a racial thing, or like this Christian thing that's against all the other religions of the world, and trying to. I mean, it's just a way to put shine a negative light on it, and it's dishonest for the most part. But at the same time, and when you see all these crazy left-wingers out there bashing it, you want to be for it. But there's no clear one definition of what it means and what all it involves. Things that are clearly defined often mean different things to different people. Because again, whose form of Christianity? The Bible form of Christianity? The way we teach Christianity? Or the way Pastor Skinny Jeans is preaching Christianity? The way John Hagee's preaching Christianity? You realize there's a lot of versions of Christianity out there. So do we want the Christian nationalists, the faces of those today, to be the ones defining Christianity? Do we want Donald Trump defining Christianity? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, John Hagee, Robert Jeffers? Are the folks, we don't want those people even associated with Christianity, yet they're the faces many times of Christian nationalism, and they're an absolute shame and an embarrassment. So it's dangerous to just eagerly embrace a political ideology, because they're often packaged deals. They have some good points, but also some very negative points as well. We're going to talk about some of the negative things here in just a minute, because a lot of the junk being promoted in this Christian nationalism is starting to cause problems for Christians. It's causing a growing hostility towards Christians, not just in America, but all over the world. And we are going to greatly hinder our ability to influence and to be a light to people in other nations if we do not let these people stop running Christianity through the mud. So it's dangerous to go overboard and reject everything about a political ideology, because sometimes there's things good in it as well. And so you have those who are Christians like, no, Christian nationalism is the devil. Okay, well, there's some things in there that are the devil, but but then they'll go as far as standing against some of the things that are good. That's wrong too. And so it's titles like Christian nationalism. It's become the name of a boogeyman to the left, or to some, but it's like a messiah to another group. And so we need to understand some things are very complicated and there's many levels to them. And sometimes we just have to take them and judge each situation and each issue. We cannot, Congress is always trying to accept bills that have tons of junk in it. They've got like their main thing that they want, but they throw in all this other junk in it too. And sometimes things that are really bad. And then if the Congress votes against it because of that bad thing that's in there, then they accuse them of voting against all these wonderful things that were in the bill too. That's dirty. And they're doing that to us. Ladies and gentlemen, they are doing that to us. They are creating these packages in politics called Republicans and Democrats. And in the Republican package, there's some good things that are in there. And they're like, if you want these good things, you got to vote Republican. It's like, yeah, but what about all those abominations that are in there? Oh, so you're going to vote against all these wonderful things? No, I don't want to vote against all those wonderful things, but I don't want to vote for all those abominations. I can't vote for that and have a good conscience. And so you need to see Christian nationalism as the same thing. Yes, there are some good things in there that we would agree with, but the faces of it, the promoters of it, are including things in there that we should never, ever be for. We should never get on board with. And when we do, ultimately we make Christianity look bad, and that's not good. So some things are just complicated. We need to force these people to take one issue at a time. It's kind of like their funding packages. They're trying to make them all a package deal. Why? Because a lot of Republicans don't want to fund Ukraine anymore, but they all want to fund Israel. So what do? They make it a package deal. And it's like, fine, I'll vote for Ukraine because I want to bless Israel. And, I wish they would stand up for their principles and not let them do that. And, we can't let them do that to us. Stop letting them just only present Republican and Democrat. Both of them are filled with abominations. Let's force them to give us some better alternatives that are out there. So most Americans, they're completely incapable of an intelligent conversation on any single issue. We have all been trained that whenever we hear certain words, to just attach a label that we don't like to that person, freak out, and end the conversation. And what I just described to you, it's created a situation where anytime we want to take a stand for a specific issue, we find ourselves defending Christian nationalism. If I want to take a stand against abortion, that is not me taking a stand for Christian nationalism. This is a very lazy and dishonest way of addressing issues. Don't be trapped into embracing Christian nationalism or rejecting everything associated with it. We are in a difficult position right now because we do believe in and we stand for certain things that many would categorize as Christian nationalism. And while I will never be ashamed of my beliefs, I am ashamed of much of what is associated with Christian nationalism. And I don't agree with these things, and I refuse to back down from certain beliefs just because people are putting a Christian nationalist label onto it. I'm not going to back down from those things. And so when it comes to these things, just, don't embrace it. When the politicians come around and they're saying Christian nationalism, no, make them explain that to you. Make them address the specific issues. Don't just accept the package deal and support them on the areas where it's right and rebuke them in the areas where it's wrong. And so what I want to do, I want to show some clips from a documentary that recently came out called Praying for Armageddon. And I've reached out to the person who made this. I'm hoping to maybe get him on the program and talk to him about it. But this is a very interesting documentary because it makes Christianity look bad. But let me just say, what they are showing being promoted in the name of Christianity on this documentary is very bad, and it's making Christians look bad. And the reason I'm doing this on this program, this is related to prophecy. The foolishness that you will hear promoted on this documentary by Christians, okay? The person making the documentary is not for this. He's against it. I don't know what this person's religion is. If he's religious, I kind of doubt that he is. He definitely seemed very pretty left-leaning to me. But, you know, even a left-winger can see some of these things that are being promoted in the name of Christian nationalism are very wrong. And specifically, that's Zionism. And Zionism is making Christians look bad all over the world, and we cannot be supportive of this. We cannot in any way support what we're seeing here. This is really bad stuff. And so I'm going to play some clips for you. And the main Christians they feature in here is John Hagee and Robert Jeffers. Okay. Now, even Zionist Baptists will admit John Hagee's a heretic. Yeah, you believe that when it comes to salvation. But politically, they align with him. With Israel, they align with him. And they're promoting the same stuff. A lot of Baptists support Christians United for Israel and all that nonsense, and it's an absolute shame. But when I was watching this documentary, it showed me how we're ruining our reputation as Christians as a whole, all over the world, with our support of Israel, our support of Zionism. And this is so contrary to true Christianity. But yet this is a part of the Christian nationalism package. I promise you, every politician that is out there who supports Christian nationalism, who talks about it, supports Zionism as well. And we do not have to accept this. We do not have to get on board with this. I will not get on board with this. And so let's go ahead and watch some of the things these people are saying, because then I'm going to show you kind of what they do in the end of this. And it's stuff like this that fools a lot of Christians into just embracing everything about Christian nationalism. Don't fall for this, okay? Don't fall for this. So let's go ahead and watch some of these clips.
In the tradition of Christianity, there is no single view of the end times. But the American evangelical community has latched on to one. Generally, they believe that believers on earth will be raptured to heaven before things get really bad. And that's the promise to the evangelical, that they will not taste death if Jesus comes back and the rapture occurs in their lifetime.
This book is literal from cover to cover. B-I-B-L-E, basic information before leaving Earth. Bible.
The American evangelical Christian is someone who believes every word of the Bible is literally true. Like the apocalypse and the return of Jesus predicted in the book of Revelation, every single sign and wonder that could be interpreted to make it seem like it's sooner. It's all good news to the evangelical Christians. Bring it on. But there are certain verses interpreted in the book of Revelation which seem to intimate that none of this can happen unless the state of Israel exists.
There will be no lasting peace in the Middle East until the Prince of Peace, the Lord Jesus Christ, returns.
The American evangelical movement now said, not only do we recognize this process can be advanced by, for instance, torpedoing the peace process so the Palestinians never get their land back. The ancient borders of Israel need to be reclaimed, and then Jesus will come back.
So right there you see that a lot of evangelicals, a lot of independent fundamental Baptists, the reason they are so supportive of Israel, it is because of bad eschatology. Bad eschatology. Now, let's just stop for a minute and let's just say that your pre-tribulational, dispensational Baptists are all right in what they teach about end times prophecy, that Israel does need to be restored to the land. All these things need to be in place. Well, here's the thing about that. all of that is just leading to the rise of Antichrist. Isn't that bad? If our theology is that things are going to get really bad before Jesus comes back, are we as Christians supposed to help facilitate that? That doesn't make any sense at all. We should be standing against it. But the problem is people have been duped into seeing Israel always as the good guy rather than the bad guy. They are the ones who, that is the spirit of Antichrist. They deny that Christ has come in the flesh. They're looking for another Messiah. That is the spirit of Antichrist right there. And yet I've heard Baptist preachers say being against Israel is the spirit of Antichrist. That doesn't make any sense at all. And so, and here's the thing too, and they point this out in this documentary, even within this view of eschatology, they believe things are going to be horrible on the earth and even horrible for the Jews. But yet they believe Jesus is going to come back and, and save all these people and everything, and we're going to be gone for it. But basically, guys like John Hagee, and if he were to get his way and his help for Israel, in his mind, Israel's going to suffer the worst persecution they've ever had in their history. So it's like that, and that's the point of this documentary, praying for Armageddon. Why are Christians praying for all this bloodshed? Why are Christians, and again, we are praying for Jesus to come back, okay? But because this world is wicked, because it's evil, because of all the bad that's going on, we do not facilitate and support the bad so he will come back. That is so messed up. And folks, everything that Israel stands for is Antichrist. Building another temple is rebellion against God. I believe they're going to do that, but why would I support them in their rebellion? Well, because the Bible says it's going to happen. Okay, well, the Bible says it's going to happen. Doesn't, I can't stop it if that's accurate. But if it's bad, if it's the Bible prophesying an evil that's going to come, should I support it? Of course not. The Bible tells us there's going to be people that are going to take the mark of the beast. So I'm just going to take it because I want to make sure I help prophecy come to pass. No, God told us these things to warn us. So we'll stand against these things, and to see Christians standing for Israel, supporting Israel, and supporting hostility towards the Palestinians, genocide of the Palestinians. We saw, Greg Locke after October 7th, talking about how we need to turn Gaza into a parking lot. And he said we need to bomb the Dome of the Rock. That way we can usher in the coming of Christ. And that's what these people think. And that's what they point in this documentary, that evangelical Christians, and they show this, people who have the ear of men like Donald Trump and a lot of our politicians are whispering in the ears of these people, encouraging them to implement policies that they believe will lead to Armageddon. Do you realize how foolish that is? Do you realize how bad that is? And again, I don't mind seeing John Hagee do that kind of thing because I do think he's a heretic. But when I see Baptists promoting the same thing, I'm very bothered by that. I'm very embarrassed by that. And, unfortunately, there are so many groups out there speaking in the name of Christianity that I get why the world's becoming more hostile towards Christians. But, if we could at least get, the name of Independent Fundamental Baptists to start looking better and for us to not run it through the mud, that would be really nice. That would be a step in the right direction, but it's just not happening. And so it is, and it's mainly American evangelicals that are promoting this nonsense. This guy, he was kind of attributing this theology to Americans, and it is. It's mostly Americans. And yes, you can find the American style of theology on end times in other countries, but that's because it was taught to them by American missionaries. Our eschatology, I should say, is so whacked out in America, and it just happens to perfectly align with the political agenda of the Republican Party. And let me tell you, throughout our history, politicians have used big name Christians to help promote a political ideology. because America wants to be a world power. But again, hey, I'm fine with America being a world power as long as we use our power for good. But at the same time, let's not make this a Christian thing. There's nothing Christian about us going and getting involved in these land disputes and wars for foolish reasons in other parts of the world. These are not Christian things. And again, world situations and battles and wars, they're complicated things. But let's not make these things about Christianity. And the way we're just always on the side of Israel no matter what, it just shows a really whacked out theology. And what we're hearing Republicans say, what we're hearing guys like John Hagee say is no different than what a lot of independent fundamental Baptists are saying. Now, I want to show this one clip they showed of a senator from South Carolina. Listen to what this guy says. It's so stupid, yet you'll hear this in churches all over America, including independent fundamental Baptist churches. Check this out.
Do you think there's a role of religious extremism here in the U.S. funding and shaping the conflict? I mean, there are a lot of folks who are part of the
That's Lee Fang,
evangelical
the
movement
maker of this
that
documentary.
Support Israel.
support Israel, and we don't really kind of see that same kind of constituent group pushing the other way.
Yeah, I wouldn't label the Baptist or the evangelical community as extreme because I feel like they're following the Scripture and what the Scripture says about Israel. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. I mean, they take it literal, and I'm one of those people.
There are some Christian Zionists that do believe in some of these biblical prophecies, and they're very controversial even within the Christian Zionist
And what the
evangelical community.
interpretation is.
Yeah, and believing in Armageddon, that there will be a final battle around Jerusalem, and that after that battle, there's a judgment day. Jews will be killed or converted. Jesus will come back. There's going to be a rapture event. What do you think about those kind of prophecies?
I believe Jesus will come back, and I'm going to be on his side.
Did you notice how he connected that to the Baptist? And unless it got edited out, the guy asking the question didn't say anything about Baptists, but yet, I don't think the Baptists are extreme. Folks, again, it's bad enough. Christians are looking bad because of Zionism. Let's at least keep the name Baptist pure, but yet we are just as bad as any of these other groups, and sometimes worse when it comes to our zeal in supporting Israel. And I shouldn't say I am not with the fundamental Baptists in this area, okay? Folks, let that be on record. I'm an independent fundamental Baptist, but I do not believe Zionism is a distinctive of the independent fundamental Baptists, but it has infiltrated most independent fundamental Baptist churches. And I don't want to throw out that label, but let me tell you, I have thrown out Zionism. And did you hear the way he interpreted Genesis 12? Just like all the modern Bible versions, just like all the evangelicals, just like John Hagee, Abraham's seed is Jesus, not the Jews. And again, not going to get into this. There is no connection, no legitimate, legal, and biblical connection to the covenants and promises of Israel in the Old Testament to the Israel of today. You cannot show me. You tell me what the connection is. I keep asking people that, and I'm not getting an answer. What is their connection? And I know what you're thinking, genetics. Now, go show me where genetics makes you Israel in the Bible. You go show me that. You can't do it. Okay, and I hope you try. I'll invite you on the podcast. I want to get a fundamental Baptist who is for Zionism to come on here and you explain the Israel of today and how they are biblically connected to the Israel of the Old Testament who received the covenants and promises and blessings and all those things. I think that will be a fun conversation. Reach out to me and let's have that conversation. But let me tell you, that senator, that was embarrassing. And I hate that Baptist came out of his mouth there. And I don't know why that happened. I don't know. But I don't want to be identified with the extremism that is supporting Israel. I don't, because I do not support them. And not militarily, I don't care about their land stuff. I only support them in giving them the gospel, and I would equally support those trying to give the Palestinians the gospel because they are souls. So let's go ahead and watch another clip. And this stuff's all disturbing.
For joining us, Pastor Hagee. Really appreciate you being with us here on Faith Nation. I was curious about some of your interactions with the president on this. You visited him at times at the White House?
We spoke about moving the embassy.
Let's go, honey. Let's go.
I talked to him about the significance of moving the embassy in the Jubilee year. I said, this is the year to move the embassy and make that declaration because it is a biblical timing of absolute precision. Thank God he's going to do exactly that.
Thanks for joining us, Pastor Hagee.
All right. So did you catch that? That was very interesting to me when I heard that clip because it proved something right that I had been saying, even though I had never heard John Hagee say that. But back when Trump made Jerusalem, recognized it, moved the embassy, the American embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing it as the capital of Israel, it was on the 70th, during the 70th year, on the 70th anniversary of Israel becoming a nation. And it was on a Jubilee year, I guess. And so the thing is, all the prophecy people are going, this is a Jubilee year. That means something biblically. This is the 70th anniversary of Israel becoming a nation. And they believe, there were so many fake prophecies that went down in 2018 because of the 70th anniversary and all that nonsense. So much foolishness was barfed during that time. And here's the thing, and I said this, they did these things during those time on purpose. It was like when all these things got set up, everybody was acting like, did you know this just happened to land on a Jubilee year? Did you know this just happened to land on the 70th anniversary of Israel becoming a nation? No, it didn't. Listen, nothing in Jerusalem, when it comes to dates, times, 7s, 10s, 50s, whatever, it's never on accident. They obsess over that stuff. And whenever it comes up on some kind of anniversary and there's some kind of event, they purposefully do things hoping to usher in the Messiah. We've been hearing Christians say that. Let's blow up the Dome of the Rock and we'll usher in the coming of Jesus. People have an idea in their mind. This is how we believe the Bible teaches these events will play out. Now let's go make it happen. And then you have guys like John Hagee that are very influential who tells Donald Trump, go to Jerusalem during this time and do this now. This is a significant time. Now is the time to do this with this. And let me tell you, I have one good thing to say about John Hagee, but it's one of the things that makes him dangerous. He's got an epic voice. He does. He makes everything sound interesting and so profound and so prophetic. And man, he just mesmerizes people with that. But the content of what he's saying, if you took the time to think about it, match it up with the scriptures, you'd see it was garbage. And he admits in that clip, they purposefully planned those things during that time. John Hagee is very powerful. He is very influential in politics. His Christians United for Israel organization is big, and I forgot how many millions of people they believe are a part of that. And Christians, they go nuts in their support for Israel. And let me tell you, no Republican is going to get elected that does not support Israel. Because again, they need the evangelical vote. They desperately need it. And so watching these people, when they stand with Israel and everything, they're pandering. They're pandering to people like us who we desperately want certain things in government that are good. And they're like, okay, we'll give you those things, but you have to take these other things too. We cannot continue compromising on these things and accepting these things. Zionism is out of the pits of hell. It is antichrist. It is not beneficial for Jews. Look, since October 7th, hostility towards Jews has risen greatly. Why? Because this idea of Zionism and getting Israel to go back to it, a lot of them don't want to go back. Most Jews do not want to, and I don't even say go back. Most of them, they've lived in whatever country they're in for generations. They don't want to go to Israel. They don't want to move out of their country and out of their home. They don't want to go there. But yet, one thing we've seen historically is many people will agree to this, that much of the persecution towards Jews has been brought on by sometimes Zionist Jews, because they got to make them uncomfortable over here so they will go back to their land. I talked to a Jewish man when I was in Israel this last time, and he was expressing his frustration with the way, his people always are just content wherever they're at. And, and how God often has to do things to get them to come back to the land and everything. And it's just like, God's not trying to get them to go back to the land, but Zionists are. It's Zionists that are pushing them to that. And because I don't hate Jews, because I'm not hostile to Jews, I'm not for doing things to try to make them move out of wherever they're at and go, over there in the Middle East, which is only going to create more problems, more hostility. But Christians are for it because they're so anxious for Jesus to come back, and they believe it lines up with their view of prophecy, that they're supportive of it. And again, even if your eschatology is right on the money, where do you get the idea that we should support something bad that is prophesied? How are these things not bad? How is the rise of the Antichrist not bad? How is the implementation of the mark of the beast not bad? We don't want to support any of this stuff. We want to be standing against it. We're not going to, because we believe in an apostasy that's going to come. Well, I'm going to encourage our church to go apostate. Why? To help usher in the coming of Christ. No, absolutely not. That is the last thing you should do. And so what a shame and embarrassment guys like John Hagee, Robert Jeffers are. And so let's go ahead and watch one final clip, because here's the problem. This is what makes me, what upset me about this documentary, is this guy, probably not a Christian, showing foolishness coming from the mouth of Christians. And then, showing something that it has infiltrated a lot of Christianity. It is a major part of Christian nationalism. Most people who would embrace the Christian nationalism are going to be Israel supporters. And you should see some of these people on this documentary. I'm going to leave links in the description to this documentary, and you need to go check it out. And I hope everyone who watches it is embarrassed for your country. And if you align with these people, I hope you're embarrassed for aligning with them. I'm glad I can say I do not believe like these people at all. But I am embarrassed these things are happening in the name of Christianity. And so let's go ahead and watch this final clip, because here's the problem again. Did you know sometimes even in the Democrat platform, there are some things that they stand for that are good? Okay. However, their solution to the problems are always bad. Okay. I can't think of one area where the Democrats have ever contributed a good solution to anything. So for example, I think we should care about the environment. I think we should take care of the planet. But, their solution is always higher taxes, more government control, more promoting of LGBT. Their solutions are always bad. But does that mean, a lot of Christians feel like we can't care about the environment because we don't want to look like Democrats. When it comes, it's good to help the poor. We should help. Did you know it's very Christian to help the poor? The problem is the way the Democrats help the poor, it actually, enables a lot of bad behavior. They don't help the poor in their attempt to help the poor. But it's like us right wingers, it's like we're against helping the poor. It's like, no, helping the poor is good. It's a very good thing to do. We just need to do it right. But let's not be against helping the poor. Let's just be against the way the Democrats are doing it. And so what we're going to see them do here is, now that he's successfully made a lot of Christians in America look like nut jobs, he's going to bring up some things that are like this great danger that actually we would be for. And I want to explain what we do with this. So let's go ahead and watch this final clip.
The stakes are high. John Hagee, he's seen as a kind of a political kingmaker. presidential hopefuls go to his megachurch, meet with Hagee, seek his endorsement. The president has unilateral authority to launch a strike or use nuclear weapons. So for John Hagee or Robert Jeffress or one of these other pastors who believes that a cataclysmic world war could bring about Armageddon, these are the people whispering in the ear of a president who could actually make that happen. We cannot look away.
And folks, he is right. These people that he's talking about, they do have heavy influence with a lot of our leaders and with the president. They are listening to what they have to say. And Trump, who, folks, please do not try to convince me that Trump is a Christian. Okay? But here's the thing. If all of a sudden tomorrow Trump decided, I want to be a born-again Christian, well, judging from the people surrounding him, I don't think he would be able to figure out how to actually do that. And maybe you know what? Maybe he is trying to be a Christian. But if he's listening to John Hagee, if he's listening to Robert Jeffress, he's not going to know how to become a Christian. And he's going to think part of being a good Christian is supporting Israel like he's doing and promoting all this nonsense. And this is embarrassing. And let me tell you, a lot of left-wingers, a lot of people in other countries, they can see how bad this is. And don't be fooled by all the blue hairs and the Democrats that are out there that are standing with Hamas and standing with Palestine right now. They do that on purpose to make you look like you're a nut job freak, left-wing baby-killing freak if you don't stand, with Israel. They do. Most of these people are paid protesters that are being crazy. They're getting bailed out of jail. These are activists. These are people that are a part of organizations. These are not regular grassroots people that are doing these protests and things out there and doing all the stuff that's getting on the news. And let me tell you, I definitely do not align with those people. I do not align with people shouting death to America and death to Israel and all that stuff that are blocking traffic and doing all the foolishness that they're doing. I don't identify with them at all, but that's what they want. They want you to think you identify with them if you don't support Israel. Again, always presenting just these two packages, and you have to take one of them. You have to pick one of them. No, you don't. They're both bad. I don't want either of them. And the simple fact is, Jews and Muslims will never learn how to peacefully coexist. You know why? Because their ideologies do not match up. But neither of those ideologies match up with Christianity. Neither of them. So why do we insist in getting involved? Like the individual said in the beginning, the solution is evangelism. Well, the Jews aren't going to evangelize. The Muslims aren't going to evangelize. If we go over there and evangelize, we'll probably die. But if you really do care about those countries, why don't you go ahead and go over there and do that? Because that's the only way you'll help anything is through the power of the gospel. But those nations have rejected the gospel for centuries and millennia, and they've made their bed. And to just tell Christians, we have to take a side with two evils. And folks, Israel does not align with us. They are not a democracy like we are. You have to be Jewish to become a part of Israel. We don't require you identify with the religion in our country. That's not how the democracy works over here. But you are. It's the Jewish state of Israel. The Palestinians don't get a vote over there. It's completely different. Evangelism is not legal over there. You're not allowed to convert people over there. I mean, they do not have the Bill of Rights like we do in this country. Folks, they are not even close to us as Americans. They do not represent our values. They do not represent our morals. They're worse than America. Tel Aviv is, the homo capital of the world over there. Why are Christians repeating this talking point that they're our greatest ally in the Middle East? Why? Why do we need one so bad over there? To be a global power. Well, again, How is being a global power associated with Christianity? It's not. That is not our mission. Our mission is not to be a military conqueror. So if your version of Christian nationalism involves being a world power and getting involved in wars and land disputes in other countries, there's nothing Christian about that. You know, in Christianity, we teach blessed are the peacemakers. That's what we teach in Christianity. And so this is not a Christian thing that is being promoted. So let's go ahead and show the rest of this clip.
American foreign policy is guided as much by a theocratic set of ideas as, for instance, Iran or Saudi Arabia is. The next step in the American evangelical community is to turn America into a theocracy.
Today, in a landmark ruling, the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, essentially ending abortion rights at the federal level.
A Texas woman facing murder charges over an abortion.
In God We Trust will be required reading in Louisiana schools this year.
If, for instance, Trump goes into a second term, beyond that, you have these evangelical theocracy people. If this vision prevails, they would be fighting a genuine crusade. And so their American foreign policy becomes a tool of biblical prophecy.
All right, so did you see what they did there? They spent a lot of time showing the foolish eschatology of a lot of people that's got Christians trying to bring about the apocalypse, the end times. And then what do they do at the end? They associate it with the ban on abortion, which, first off, okay, it wasn't even a ban on abortion. It was an overturning of a very bad decision by the Supreme Court that happened years ago, leaving it up to states. But here's the thing about that. Again, government does have to regulate some sense of morality. Because again, we believe everybody believes right and wrong. Where do you get your right and wrong from? We admit as Christians, we get it from the Bible. That's why we don't believe in murder and adultery and theft and bearing false witness and all these other things. And, you know, killing your baby is a horrible thing. I mean, it's as bad as it gets. You know, perversion, you know, homosexuality. These are some of the most disgusting things in the world. So what they do, and this is what the left's doing, they're showing this major flaw in Christians, and that is the support of Israel and the support of Zionism, and then they're connecting it to, you know, just our government. Like the Republicans are freaking out because it's like overturning Roe versus Wade. They didn't actually want to get rid of abortion. They didn't think it was ever actually going to happen. They don't care about that. But again, Christians, we do, because we do have a morality. We just admit where it comes from. The secularists, where does their morality come from? It comes from the state. Everybody has a God. Everybody has a supreme authority. So what's yours? Mine's the God of the Bible. What's yours? Well, the government, the will of the people, democracy, whatever. But no, I think that's a bad ideology. And we need to make sure as Christians, we do not embrace massive flaws and errors, because ultimately, overall, it hurts the cause of Christ. And I believe Christians are greatly hurting their influence in the world. We're going to make it harder for us to be able to send missionaries to these other countries and them accept what we're teaching if we have this weird Americanized political Zionistic ideology, eschatology. It is a massive error that people must get rid of. And the world is watching. Our own country is watching. And more people are getting turned away from Christianity because of these bad actors like John Hagee and Robert Jeffress. Let's do whatever we have to do to separate ourselves from them. Let's call out their foolishness. Let's get these things right. So hopefully this helps you understand how you should feel about Christian nationalism. I appreciate you watching this. God bless you, and we will see you all next time.